What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young, and I have just hit the live show button, like for real. Welcome to the show. We're going to do a little afternoon recap, early morning recap. Depends on where you are, right? It's like, what, 2 o'clock, 2:30 where I am. That means it's like 12:30 on the West Coast, and it's like 3:30 on the East Coast, which means the East Coast, y'all getting ready to, go into what we think of as a really good Notre Dame-Boston College game. But I want to start with Indiana is for real. 24-0, they whipped the Michigan State Spartans, who once upon a time beat an actual football team, like with pads and helmets. And also Michigan. Michigan's with Wisconsin tonight, and now we got to ask the real question about how bad is Michigan. I wrote a piece for FoxSports.com about Michigan and the need for Jim Harbaugh to get a win against this Wisconsin team. Number one, because they got a number next to their name. And number two, because you really don't want to go 1-for-3 to start this abbreviated Big Ten season. It's not a good look. But for Indiana, they are for real. 4-0 and charging at Ohio State the way that we thought Penn State or Michigan would be charging at Ohio State. Michael Penix goes for 25-38, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But the story was Michigan State and the 4 takeaways. 2 interceptions of Rocky Lombardi by Tom Allen's crew in the first 20 minutes of the game, and they kicked the number 1 quarterback off the field. And we got to see a little kid out there doing some moving and shaking. I don't know what exactly we're going to do with Peyton Thorne except compare him to Rocky Lombardi, because I had to listen to Dave Pasch and Greg McElroy try to cape for Michigan State quarterbacks, likes of Connor Cook and Kirk Cousins, and I'm like, nah, man, I don't really see it that way. I don't know of Michigan State as being this kind of place where they just pump out quarterbacks. It ain't been that. It's been Mark D'Antonio's defense. And if anything, Le'Veon Bell has been the best player to come out of there of recent note. And you can go back wide receivers. You can talk about Muhsin Muhammad. You could talk about, Plaxico Burress, right? But you're not really going to talk about the quarterbacks. And for that matter, you're really not going to talk about the defense here of late, which is really what we thought Michigan State was all about. I thought it was interesting that Tom Allen, head coach of Indiana, told Holly Rowe that he fashioned himself and that football team in Indiana after what Michigan State had become. Also leads me to this. Michigan State has played in a college football playoff. Michigan is not. That's what I'm getting at. Michigan is not. Like, this is more insult to injury for Michigan. And after Iowa stomped a mud hole in Minnesota and walked it dry, that win doesn't even look good, because now we're talking about PJ Fleck, and the row the boat folks need to invest in some Flex Seal. It's just not going on very well. Indiana also going into a week in which Ohio State really wanted to have a ranked Indiana. They didn't know they wanted a ranked Indiana, but their schedule is looking super soft up until and after Indiana with the loss of this game against Maryland, when we thought they might get tested. Felt like it could be a trap game with the way that Tululia Tagovailoa had been playing, Raheem Jarrett, Jake Funk, and that defense kind of finding itself. But now we get to see what I think is going to be a top 10 ranked Indiana, hard charging at the Buckeyes, who feel like one of the 3 best teams in college football, but now they have an opportunity to prove it. I'm not going as far as to say Indiana's going to beat Ohio State, but now Ohio State gets to hold up a pelt that is a top 10 ranked opponent in the middle of the season in a way that, say, Clemson might not, right? Like Miami looking real suspect against Vatech. And to date, that's kind of like your best win, right? Notre Dame gets Boston College team that went up by 18 against the same Clemson team that they beat. So they need to go and beat BC to keep things rolling for themselves and to make this college football playoff scenario interesting. Also sneaky in here is Indiana has ranked as high as number 4 in the country. Got to go back to 1967 for them to do that, but you understand now what they are chasing, because if they beat a number 3 ranked Ohio State, they're going to be ranked one of the top 4 teams in the country. It's going to happen, especially after the way that they beat a formerly top 10 or top 25 Michigan team, right? And the way that they stomp a mud hole in every opponent they faced. And the way that we're looking at Nebraska and Penn State, and the way that Nebraska looks like it's imploding. Last time I checked, Penn State was charging, looking to tie the game up with just under a minute left to play. They held off Penn State, Nebraska wins 30-23. Late charge. Will Levis coming in there. 219 yards passing, 14-31. No TDs, no picks. Luke McCaffrey leads leads the quarterback play at Nebraska with 152 yards. It also gives me an opportunity to tell y'all that Ty Freifogel is actually the truth. That dude had more receiving yards than TCU or Penn State or Nebraska in the game against Michigan State today. Ty Freifogel is actually making one of those all-name type comparisons along with Watt Fillior, who's on his team. And then you got Thomas Allen, who was carted off, son of Tom Allen, heart, soul of defense. You saw how many players came up to him to wish him well. And what I hope is not a season-ending injury for him, but certainly looks bad. Also learned that Tom Allen is on tilt all the time. Called himself naturally caffeinated when talking with Holly Rowe. Also the kind of dude that has picked up a black eye, a gash in his cheek, and missing teeth for his celebrations with his players because of some of the plays that they have made, particularly on defense. I like that. I like that a lot. I also like the idea of a basketball school showing out in a real way, headed to what, is a matchup against the football school in that region. Like the Big Ten Conference and Ohio State football go hand in hand. And for Indiana to be there for something other than basketball, I'm here for it. I also want to see Michael Penix Jr. have an opportunity to match up against what I think is the best quarterback in all of college football in Justin Fields, because nobody has been on his level to date. I mean, that dude still has more touchdowns than incompletions and just as many passing touchdowns as incompletions through, well, not that many games of the season, but enough of the season for us to really make a characterization that Justin Fields is one of the best college football players in America, if not the best. I want to do a short shout out to the chat, those of y'all that showed up in here to say what's up. Trevor Emmerich's in here. Lindor's in here. August Person is in here. Brendan Ludlow, longtime friend of the channel. Truett Meyer was good. Ruku was good. Tommy Reimers. I want to make sure I get that right, as my man is a member of the channel. Eric was good. Jordan B was good. Adams Apple. Okay, all right. I see that. We got one dude coming through here with Jenna James. I can't get it like that, dog. RJ, who is going to be the next Michigan head coach? Like, there's actually a really good conversation to be had about that, because, like I said, I wrote a piece about this on foxsports.com. You should go check out. But I think the next coach is Jim Harbaugh. Their team is very young. They lost 10 guys to the NFL draft, 3 on the offensive line, 2 at linebacker, 2 in the secondary. Like, they're growing up in front of you, and they have an opportunity to be really great next year. That said, they were supposed to be really great last year, and we're in year 6 going into year 7 as Jim Harbaugh makes about $8 million to coach that football program. So we'll have to wait and see, man. Like, if they beat Wisconsin, I think that's going to quiet down the rumors. They lose to Wisconsin, it's just going to keep going. There are folks that want to tell me that Luke Fickell would never look at that job if it became open, to which I would say Bo Schembechler was an assistant for Woody Hayes at Ohio State before he became the head coach at Michigan, for those of y'all that think that the former Buckeye would never do that. Plus, Marcus Freeman is still defense coordinator at Cincy, and I would love for Marcus Freeman to get a shot as a head coach, whether it be Group of 5 or Power 5, just make the leap. He turned down a job at Michigan State, but I think that's because he was waiting on a better gig to come available.